Hello, good morning. Coffee in hand. Something I'd like to talk about popped up while I was sweeping the road this morning in the dark, which I do every morning. It's part of the Philippine culture of sweeping out the front of your property on the road, removing the leaves and litter that sometimes seems to appear through the night. Many of us, regardless of where we come from, have pursued this endless challenge in life, and that is to not only make enough money to live, to provide for one's family, but also provide a future. Something very Australian, very American, very English is buying property, purchasing property in a rundown state, maybe, in a good, worse house in a good street kind of syndrome scenario, and spending as little as possible, but improving on what you had. And hopefully within a 2 or 3 months, having another opportunity to maybe flip it over, as they say, and to increase one's cash flow. It's called capital gains. In Australia, capital gains, and in New Zealand and England, doesn't seem to affect the home that you're living in. And so many of us tend to buy a home, hopefully the best house, the worst house in a good street or a good location. The old theory, location, location, location. And with that, we build up a nice little nest egg. And that seems to be very, very common in many of the countries I've mentioned. When we have had the joy of a separation, a divorce in the West, most of that tends to go one way, and that's her way. And the idea that somehow buying a property here in the Philippines and seeing it go her way seems to many as a foolish enterprise. I tend to agree in part, but not in others. One is that those that come here have the intention to stay, to be with, and to pursue a happiness with a new and beautiful Filipina. But for many who have made contact with me over the last few days, and I do really appreciate the unfolding, the unwrapping of one's personal life to myself as being a privilege to have listened to some of your stories. Some of them very heartbreaking, but then some of them quite inspiring, if in fact they are true. But I do, having experienced getting up and starting again so many times in life, that I too tend to believe that it still is possible. You can travel back home, and if you have the connections and the ability, you can build up your capital quite quickly if you're prepared to work hard. And doing so, you do it with the knowledge that the skills that you've learnt over your lifetime are still able to be used even at the age of 70 plus, providing that your body, of course, can manage to keep up with it. But I can recall when I was young, we had a man called Mr. Sherville, good old English name, and he used to come round every 6 months to my mother's home, and my mother would have a list of things that she wanted done. But Mr. Sherville was getting on in age too, and every year he would come back, but he would plod along and do the things of the list that Mum had, and those that he couldn't manage to do that 6 monthly callback time, he would put on the priority for the next time he came round. But what I'm meaning is that just because you're old and you just maybe take a little bit longer to do, the quality of your work hasn't suffered as a result. And therefore, it's important that we recognize that old people can still, if they're physically able to, still make a pretty good income compared to that of maybe the lazier younger ones who tend to work 9 to 5 and not prepared to work weekends and extra hours at night to get a job completed. And many customers appreciate that effort, that extra effort that's put in by us older guys. But what I'm meaning is that many of you also have helped your sons and daughters get ahead too. They might not quite appreciate that, but by you leaving the asset behind with mother when you go to the hill behind where you live on your next journey, they don't recognize that you've actually left a sizable bit of your profit and your equity, sweat equity, behind with your eggs. And therefore, as a result, they do benefit from it. But some of you, of course, will maybe help a younger generation buy a home, put a small deposit down, maybe buy their first car. And all of these things contribute to you, as you're getting older, helping the next generation. So for those Americans and Aussies and English people who find the Philippines no longer the place they thought they were intending to stay their life till the end, there is hope. There is hope that maybe you buy an old house, maybe even with your children, and you make it a combined effort where you split some of the profit to your way and some to theirs. And with your skills, you can not only help your son or daughter achieve their ambition of making a little bit of extra capital, it also provides you with a place to live. It also provides you with a reconnecting with the family. And these are areas to explore if you have to turn around and go back. Nobody wants to go back and feel that they're useless, a piece of dead wood, a burden on others. But if we have that skill and we have the ability to maybe get up each morning to encourage those younger than ourselves, come on, time to get up, we're going off, we've got to start at 8 o'clock, maybe 7. And you will then install maybe, hopefully, a little bit more get up and go in them too, and demonstrate to them how their father also achieved things that they now benefit from, whether it's be now because they live with mum, but they're now able to see how hard the father has worked in his life. And he hasn't given up just because he's become older. He's a bit slower, but he's still able to get up and do these things. Maybe even in a supervisory role, a knowledge role, maybe doing the negotiating for the prices, maybe passing on information about how to find the best property to live in while you do it up, and then flog it off to the next eager buyer. But all these things help to encourage us to realize that just because we've reached retirement doesn't mean we've ended our lives. Doesn't mean that, sure, some of us come here for the good times and realize that the good times can't always keep up with the body, and therefore you have to be more realistic. And I think a lot of Americans now are starting to realize that. They've been convinced, driven by the almighty dollar, the American dream, and they're living what they think is part of that. But really, is it? Really what it is they've given up back home for financial reasons. They've not seen the ability to still strive ahead. But in the West, of course, we have insurance, liabilities, actions, being sued, possibly being forced to go bankrupt. All those things confront us much more so than they do outside of America or England or Australia. So go back with a positive attitude. Go back, if you have to, with the feeling that nothing will stop you except death. So if you like this video, give us a thumbs up and give it some thought. What could you do if you had to go back? It's not all doom and gloom. Bye now.